Welcome to Trial Costa Rica. I'm Adam Baker. This is your weekly video series that discusses everything from travel, relocation, inspiration, and living in Costa Rica. Perhaps you're thinking about making the big move to Costa Rica sometime soon. If you have any questions, let me know in the comments box below and I'll get straight back to you. Please make sure to give us a like if you're enjoying this video series, and of course hit subscribe to never miss a weekly episode. This week's guest is Rebecca Anderson. Rebecca is originally from Wyoming, however she made the move to Costa Rica in 2011. She had been living here for 7 years as a beach resident in the town of Samara on the Nicoya Peninsula. However, a few years ago in 2018, Rebecca made the move back to the US, to Denver, Colorado. So who better to speak to about living in Costa Rica and moving back to the States from Costa Rica than Rebecca. Good morning, Becca. How are you?
Good morning, Adam. I'm good. How are you doing?
Very good. It's a lovely 70 degrees outside in San Jose. A bit overcast, but absolutely gorgeous. Whereabouts are you right now in the States?
I'm in Denver, Colorado.
Okay. And how's it looking on this late June morning?
It's gorgeous, sunny. You know, Denver's always sunny. I think it's like 75, supposed to be 80 degrees. So
Fantastic.
Really nice today.
Before the pandemic, I managed to escape to Denver and do some skiing in the Rockies there in Colorado in February, a month before everything shut down. It was wonderfully cold, 0 degrees more or less. Quite an experience skiing. But we're going to get to talk to you. We're going to get later on in our conversation today about why you're in Denver, why you're in Colorado, having been here, as I mentioned in my intro, for over 7 years in Costa Rica, since moving back in 2018. I'm very interested to get all the juice, your reasoning for going home. But first of all, I'd like to just hear a little bit about your story. What brought you to Costa Rica in the first place? And why did you move? Why did you stay?
Perfect. So I actually studied abroad in Costa Rica in San Jose in 2003. I was just there for 4 months and, had a really great time. As part of the study abroad experience, we got to travel the country and see, Manuel Antonio, Monteverde, like we traveled everywhere. And so that was really cool. And I just fell in love with it and, it stuck with me. So after college in 2005, I actually moved back to Costa Rica. I lived in San Jose for like a year and worked for a study abroad program, the same one I studied abroad with, and just help students do the same thing I did, and then ran through all my money that I'd saved.
Yeah, I remember the feeling.
And I was like 23, and you can do that when you're 23. Sure. And then moved back to the States, was in Wyoming for about 4 years, and then a good friend of mine was like, do you want to move back to Costa Rica? And I said, yeah, I do. So we ended up.
So you had quite a lot of experience, 5, but in small blocks.
Yeah.
And then waited for that. Was it 2011 when you came down permanently? Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
And that was gonna just be a year. I was only moving down there for a year, to beach bum it for a year. Just to get it out of my system, as we all I think we can do when we go to Costa Rica. And then ended up staying for the 7 years.
A lot more than you planned. Which beach did you end up staying in?
So I was on Samara Beach. Have you ever been to Samara Beach?
I've been to Samara. Very nice. It was one of my first ever beaches when I came down in 2006 and I was staying in Monteverde in the cloud forest. That was one of the few day tours that we could do. We went camping down the beach, being on the Nicoya Peninsula from Monteverde. It was kind of a straight shot. That was maybe 15, 16 years ago. So the roads were still terrible and it took a long time to get there, but very nice stretch. What was living in Costa Rica like for you by the beach there in Samara? Quite a small town.
Yes, exactly. Very small town. I mean, it was magical. Like, that's how I describe it. Rode my bike everywhere, walked everywhere, everyone, which is just so nice. So as you walk into town, you meet everyone, you see everybody, it's just like a really small community. Very welcoming, as Costa Ricans are, the people there were so nice and welcoming and really took us in. And so it's just a really special little place.
Nice.
Living near the beach, I have a dog that loves the water, so we would just walk to the beach every morning, and she got to swim, and that was really nice. So
Samara is one of those towns that's kind of growing slowly with tourism, but not nearly as big as Jaco or Quepos or Tamarindo. What would you say? Were there many expats, many US expats or foreigners living in Samara with you? Was it more of a rustic local town?
There are quite a few expats. When I first moved there in 2011, there were expats, but not as many as there are now. And it was also, so there's a language school in Samara that brings in a lot of like German and Swiss tourists.
Yeah.
So it was much more like international than anything. There's a ton of Italians, French, France has a little community, like, so it's very international. It is now changing. A lot more American families are moving there and buying houses there. And like, it is the neighborhood I lived in when I moved there in 2011 was like outskirts of town, like we were like, do we want to live this far away from everything? And now that neighborhood has completely blown up. It is built up. There's a house on every lot. Like, it is a completely different place. So so Samara has been discovered. And it's changing quickly. Like, it still has that really cute like square, and so everyone can walk everywhere. It's not as big as other places, but it's definitely blowing up.
Which town would you compare Samara to? Which other towns, maybe 2 or 3 beach towns that you know of that are similar in Costa Rica?
I always say like Malpais.
Okay.
Malpais still has that like a little bit more Tico flavor, kind of thing. And then because we also get like, we're only 30 minutes really from Nosara. So Nosara has that much bigger like tourism. And so I compare Malpais and Santa Teresa a lot. Like, they're kind of similar to Samara and Nosara. Gotcha. And then maybe Montezuma. Montezuma still has that like little town feel where you don't have to like have a car necessarily. And
so those around everywhere, take your bike.
Yep, exactly.
It's a similar stretch of coast there. You're all on that Guanacaste coast. So I guess it has kind of a similar vibe as you all the way down Montezuma, Santa Teresa, Malpais.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, give me an idea of daily life for you. So what how is it every day?
Okay, so daily life was, wake up early, because in Costa Rica, or especially in Guanacaste, if you're not like doing your things by 7 a.m., it is hot.
Sure. It is, and everybody's up early.
Yeah, everyone wakes up early. So wake up early. First thing, take the dog to the beach, do my beach walk, and then usually I was really like doing a ton of yoga when I was there because it's so easy and convenient. And so I ride my bike to yoga, do yoga, and then sit down and do my travel agent job for the day.
Nice. And then have the beautiful sunsets available, walk on the beach in the evening. What about places to eat and dine out? I'm like you say, I'm guessing Samara has been developing in the last 10 years quite a lot. Were there a lot of different choices to eat out?
Yeah, I think so. Like, I think it's small, so you would definitely get a little like, okay, we've eaten there, times already. But there are good options. Like, there's great food. Honestly, what I think is one of Costa Rica's best restaurants is in Samara.
Oh, nice. Which one's that?
It's called Mama Gui. It's an Italian guy who like has lived in New York, run restaurants in New York for years.
Okay.
So everything he does is homemade pasta, he cures his own meat, he makes his own cheese, like everything is homemade, and it is incredible.
Shout out to Mama Gui's. So when next time I'm going there,
he knows how I feel about them.
Fantastic.
I was there like 3 times a week. But so the food is great, and then of course we have like good Costa Rican options, great ceviche, like fresh seafood and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, for sure. For those watching, in the last few episodes, I always ask, what about your cost of living? We've discussed a lot, 2 or 3 bedroom, bigger places, renting by the sea in the Central Valley, Escazú. But if you're living in one of these small rustic beach towns that are up and coming, what's an average realistic cost of living? What were you spending? Rent, electricity, groceries?
Yeah. So I always have to preface this, like, I lived very basic.
Yeah.
I chose to live very basic because I wanted to travel and, do everything.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, we didn't have air conditioning, like
Hot and sun.
Yeah. It was rough. Yeah. No air conditioning, no pool, like, very basic. And that was when we first started living there, it was like $400 a month. And by the time I left, it was up to 600. So it had like increased a little bit.
Yeah.
And then electricity and stuff, like you don't have heaters. And so like nothing really, it's like, I don't know, $50 a month, if that. Okay. Internet, 45 to 50 in that range, I think.
So you're around $100, 100
yeah, with the
give or take
utilities.
for your expenditure. And
Yeah.
the groceries, again, you have, I guess, a limited access to some of the bigger supermarkets as opposed to the other more built up areas. But you've got probably a lot of access to local farmers markets or the local fruit stands and stuff.
Yeah, or I mean, one thing I loved about living there was the fruit and vegetable truck would pull up right in front of my house.
Yeah.
Like every Tuesday, they would drive right in front of my gate, and I would walk out and get all my fruit and veggies for like $7.
Yeah.
And it was amazing, and I didn't have to go anywhere.
So you're actually getting all that natural goodness straight to your door.
Like, it's just incredible. The first time they showed up, I was like, what is happening? This is amazing.
Melones, papayas.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they came from Cartago, San Jose, and they would come like once a week. Yeah, once a week, and it was the greatest gift ever. And our whole, like, they would pull right in front of my house. I don't know why my house, but then the whole neighborhood would come and buy everything. But it was amazing.
That's a good trip. So you were literally, you were easily living on under $1,000 a month.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
All in. And was that for a 1-bedroom, a tiny small apartment? Do you have a couple of bedrooms?
No, it was a little 3-bedroom Tico house.
Nice.
So for a long time I had a roommate, and then like for the last like 2 years I didn't have a roommate.
And do you think that's realistic nowadays, 2021? No.
I don't know what that house is renting. It's probably similar, but most people can't do no AC. Like I would never go back. I mean, I was like 27 when I first got there. I'm very like now I need AC. Like even in Denver, I'm like, I need AC.
Yeah.
So I think more realistically, like a more less rustic house, you're looking like $1,000 to $1,200 in that area now.
Yeah.
Like
no, for sure. Then that's still a lot cheaper. You know, we're talking always, some people think 2,000, 2,500, 3,000 up to 5,000 if you have a family, a large family, a couple of cars to run. It depends where you want to be. I can imagine a lot of people would ask, well, Becca, you were living in a smaller town. It was up and coming 2000, 2011, 2020 now. How safe was it in that tiny house? Did you feel was it a safe community?
I did. There's always instances like late at night on the beach kind of stuff that I always tell people, just be very careful like you would anywhere. But in our little house, like I never felt unsafe. We also have, I have a big yellow lab, and my roommate had a big black like Mastiff mix. So like we felt very safe with those two because nothing got by them. Yeah. But no, my neighborhood was safe, and people watch out for, especially since we lived there so long, people knew us, and so they watched out for us. And it felt very safe. Like I biked everywhere. I walked everywhere. I never had any.
That's good to hear.
Yeah.
And I think that's generally the case on much of those smaller beach towns there in Victoria and Guanacaste, apart from maybe petty theft on the beach. Yeah. Out really, really late. Just keep yourself to yourself. Yeah. No, for sure. That's good.
Yeah. I always tell people like, it's very safe, but if you're walking home at night and you don't know the area, maybe grab it just kind of keep it like you would in a city.
Yeah. For sure. Yeah. Well, what advice would you give someone else looking to relocate to Costa Rica, and perhaps asked you specifically about beach towns and the beach life?
Mm-hmm. So my roommate was a realtor when we lived there, and one of the things that we saw all the time would be people came for a week-long trip and then decided to buy. Yeah. And living and vacationing are very different, especially in those beach towns. Like it's we know like what Costa Rica nature does, like it just overtakes your house. And so like if you aren't living there and you are only there for a month, a year, like your house when you leave it is a completely different house when you come back. And people just don't understand that, and so like my advice always is rent for a month in a couple places, like that's going to give you the best thing. And that's what we did when we first moved there. We hopped around to Santa Teresa, and I had known all those beach towns, but I'd only been there as a tourist. So like we, hopped around and kind of stayed a little bit to see which one was the best fit. Yeah. And that's my biggest advice. Like rent for a month if you can in Tamarindo, rent for a month in like a Nosara or wherever you want to be. Yeah. So that you can determine like, is this the right place for me?
That's really good advice. I mean, a lot of people have been saying, obviously travel down here if you can extend your travel, but you bring up a really good point. Even renting is different from actually staying in a hotel for 4 weeks or traveling around the country, seeing which area you like. You actually rent and you're used to living, cooking, water, all the usual stuff. You get a really good idea. And if you can do that, I mean, the tourist visa, right? 90 days, 3 months. If you have time to try different places, rent, Airbnb, long-term rentals. Yeah. Okay. So stay a bit longer and then get a feel for it. If you had some,
Of course, not everyone can do that, but if you can.
If you can, yeah. Especially if you're planning on making the big move, the relocation.
Yeah.
As you were answering that question, I heard the ice cream man outside tingling his little bell. It made me think about what you were saying about the fruit. We still get outside.
We get that right now, Adam. Like in my neighborhood, we have a little ice cream guy, and it reminds me so much of Costa Rica.
Oh, there you go. Okay.
I think I don't know where he's from, but like I think it's like a Latin America. You know, he has like the heritage, and so yeah, I'm like, oh my god, we get this now. It's so great.
For sure. Okay, well, let's get to some of the juicy stuff. One of my questions is, how does it compare to home? I guess Samara is quite far removed from the US. So, I mean, if somebody asked you, it's like, you know, you're not comparing apples to apples, right?
You're not. It's hard to say. But one thing that is funny to me is because I'm from Wyoming.
Yeah.
And I ended up in like the cowboy region of Costa Rica. So like there are some similarities, you know, like Wyoming's like there's a lot of ranching, there's a lot of cowboys, and like same as Wyoming.
That's the Guanacaste life.
Yeah, exactly. Guanacaste is all like cowboys and cows and yes. But I was like, that's so funny that I ended up in the same kind of like atmosphere in a foreign country. But yeah, it's hard to compare. I don't know, like especially because you know Wyoming is landlocked. This was the beach. Like they're so different.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's hard to.
Sure. Where would you start? Okay, so the big question is: 7 years living in Samara, having a great time. Why did you leave Costa Rica?
Honestly, now if you like right now, I'm like, I don't know. What was I thinking?
Oh, really? Okay.
Not every day, but some days I'm just like, what? We had a good thing going. What was I thinking? But no, it was definitely it was a very small town. I felt like I had done and seen everything I needed to in Costa Rica.
Yeah.
Like you could literally plop me on any road in Costa Rica and I'd be like, oh, I'm, 15 minutes from wherever. And I just felt like I needed a new adventure. It also, I wanted like more arts and music and, all the things that a city like Denver has until COVID shuts down everything for a year and a half. But I just felt like I needed just that more of that kind of stuff, which was very hard to access in Samara. I was also, a 6-hour bus ride from San Jose sometimes. So to even get it in San Jose, it's a long trip. And even to fly out to go somewhere was a long trip. And I just felt like I needed to be closer to a big airport. And
I think sometimes it's quite easy for people to forget, if you do enjoy culture specific to galleries, museums, theater on a large scale with a lot of variation, you don't necessarily get that easily in Costa Rica. I'd be lying if I said I haven't missed that from Europe massively. And even if you are living here in San Jose, we do have a couple of great theaters. But and again, aside from the COVID shutdown, it's one of those things that it's obviously a lot easier to get in the countries that we've probably come from. Costa Rica is obviously famed for its wildlife and its nature and its spectacular geography. So I can imagine as well, like you say, even being 6 hours away sometimes on a bus in Samara, you probably felt quite isolated. And Costa Rica is a very small country. Was it a long decision? Was it all of those things combined, or like how long did it take you to decide? Okay,
no, Adam, even the day I was leaving, I was like, is this the right decision? I mean, it took me forever. Like I feel like every beginning of a rainy season, I'd be like, okay, I'm going to do one more high season and then I'm going to go. And by the end of the high season, Costa Rica, it's magical. There's no other way to describe it. It pulls you in and you're like, and especially the rainy season, it's so gorgeous and beautiful. And you're just like, why would I ever leave this? It's amazing. It was definitely a long decision. My roommate was moving as well. And so I was like, okay, well, if you're moving, like I don't feel like I want to be here without you. It's hard. It's a transient place. So like you don't meet, I had a good group of friends, but it's hard to meet friends because a lot of people come in for a month or a week and leave. And so it was like, well, if my really solid friend is leaving, like maybe I don't want to make new ones, so maybe it's time to
It's a good question, especially for young expats or immigrants, whichever word you choose to use as traveling down. it can be very, you bring up a really good point that perhaps it's not something you would necessarily worry about if you were relocating later in life, retiring or having your family. But if you're in your 20s, 30s, even 40s, you make a certain group of friends living abroad, they can come and go. And
Yeah.
you used to it. Would you say you made a relatively big social circle with your Tico friends as well, the locals?
Yeah. Yeah, like I have great Tico friends as well. I have a lot of great Tico friends from when I lived in San Jose.
Yeah.
Like just the greatest humans, like just really took care, especially in that time of my life when I was just,
Yeah.
24 and living life.
Exactly.
But yeah, they're just the greatest. And so, yeah, I had a good group of friends. I have a great group of expat friends that are still there too, that are married to Costa Ricans and, have little like adorable babies now. And like, so like they're made their life and, like are staying, which is great. So every time I visit, I still get to see them.
Yeah,
and,
sure.
Yeah.
Was there any one thing that triggered the move? Like, okay.
I don't think so. And we kind of talked about this before. Dating was definitely a big part of wanting to move. It was a small town, so you kind of knew everybody. So it's hard to date like everyone that you see every single day.
I can imagine. Small town as well. Yeah.
Sure. And also, or you get like travelers in, which isn't, necessarily what you want either. So that was a big part of it. I just felt like, okay, I'm 36. Like I would like to start dating. So
I hear that.
That was a big part
for sure. I was going to ask you, did you ever consider at any point moving anywhere else in Costa Rica? You traveled all over the country here. You're a travel consultant. You still work as a travel agent for Costa Rica with your knowledge. Did you ever think at any point, I know your roommate was leaving, but to go to a different area, maybe a more built up area before going back to the States?
Yeah, I did. I definitely did. And I thought about even like other areas in South and Central America, like where else could I go? But like for me, I had lived in San Jose, I had done it. It's not my not my favorite city. I think it is like growing and just getting really, really cool. It's like there's so many changes that are happening and I really think it's neat, but it just wasn't where I wanted to live. And I knew if I moved to another beach town, I would always be like, oh, Samara's better. What am I doing here? Like Samara's better. So I like just put it.
It's funny. I always think whenever I go back to Monteverde for like a nature visit or a weekend, unlike your case, I never like how I lived in Monteverde for a year and a half. I'm like, wow, it's a really small town and you're really isolated in the mountains. Like, oh, I did it for that long, but how did I do it for that long? It wasn't.
I think about that too. I think about like especially with the no AC. I'm like, how did I do that? Like
that's a surprise to me. I'm a guy who likes the cooler weather. San Jose is quite nice. You don't really need AC. Get a nice breeze going. But at the moment you get to the beach, especially if you're living there,
the weather in San Jose is a dream. It's the perfect weather. But I don't know how, like those kind of things. I'm like, how did I do that? Or just like, and I don't know how much it happens in San Jose, but it's a dry place. So, the water would go out for 2 or 3 days. Or the electricity would go out and you just like, okay, like the water's out. You just deal with it because what else are you going to do?
For sure.
It's kind of just like, wait, that's so random.
And
like,
these are the things that people don't necessarily realize, especially when you're staying at hotels or people where they have backup generators or, huge water supply there. I will say it's got a lot better in San Jose. I've been in my same apartment for nearly 10 years. Wow. Every year, the water's never really been much of an issue. Occasionally, the electricity goes out on a big stormy night. It doesn't last very long. So I guess that depends, obviously, as where you are. That leads me into quite an interesting question. So you've mentioned a couple of things. Obviously, living in a small town, it takes its toll. Dating, for sure. What other specific downsides are there to living in Costa Rica? And that you now back home or in Colorado go, oh, I don't miss that. Apart from the water going out occasionally.
That's a good one. And just the note on the water, if you have a tank, it doesn't matter. The water can go out and you can have a tank. But like we didn't have a tank. So
you run out of water.
When you're like looking for a home, if anyone's listening, look for a home that has a tank because that matters.
Good.
Oh geez, things that I don't miss. I mean, on like the oppressive heat, I don't miss. Like it was, from 9 to 3, you couldn't be out in the sun. It was a lot. So I don't miss that. I really enjoy the seasons. in Colorado. Like it's nice to kind of have like beginning and ends to things, which is, like, okay, like winter's beginning, it's ended. I don't know. I kind of like that. Um, I personally didn't have to do a ton of like bureaucratic stuff in Costa Rica because I like rented, I didn't own, so there was a lot of that I skipped, but I saw like the headaches of that. So
Yeah.
but that in the US is also can be a headache. So it's not something that's like
Sure.
that much better.
But the process in Costa Rica with the bureaucracy of paperwork, renting, banks, just the preparation and the patience that you need, that's come up a fair bit. Yeah, no, I totally agree. But then you have it perhaps more so, even if it's officiated better in the States.
Yeah, exactly. There's more.
Same case for me in the UK. You go back, you're like, how complicated it is to live in your house. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't miss the bus. I owned the car, but it was like a beach car. It wasn't like a drive to San Jose car. So
roads.
Yeah. So taking the bus, I do not miss the bus lifestyle.
Yeah.
Sometimes it was great. Sometimes you met like cool people and stuff. But the other thing was the bus left here at 4:30 or left Samara at 4:30 in the morning, which was just like
everybody gets up very early. Everybody is they're used to that even before say the sun rises.
Yeah.
And it's like a lot of patience, the Pura Vida patience side of it in Costa Rica.
Exactly.
Imagine more so in Samara, especially all rustic.
Yeah, everything's very laid back. Nothing gets done in a hurry, which is great. Like that's why everyone feels so relaxed in Costa Rica.
Yeah.
But
it's funny. It's kind of nice for Costa Rica. The first two things you mentioned, the oppressive heat. Guanacaste is a very hot region of the country, so it's not quite as bad in other places. I miss the seasons as well. But that's not detrimental to Costa Rica.
No,
it's just its typical location, something we miss from the Northern Hemisphere. So and again, you really only have 2 seasons in Costa Rica.
And it's not, exactly. It's not the bad thing about Costa Rica. It's just something you miss.
Yeah. So
like I can't think of anything that's like. I'm sure there are things, but like right now, there's nothing that I was like
hasn't popped up in the last few years.
Yeah.
What did you miss from Costa Rica?
I miss like being landlocked in Denver. Definitely, I'm like going a little stir crazy. I need water.
Yeah.
You know, that's a little hard. So definitely, like, just having access, just swimming in the ocean, like, because the ocean's always warm in Costa Rica and gorgeous and like amazing. So I miss that because even here, like, you can get to a lake, but it's at 10,000 feet and it's freezing cold.
That would be quite a body shock.
You can't swim in those. But so I miss like, and then I don't know. The Costa Rican people, everyone says hello, and Colorado is a very friendly place, but Costa Rica is just so friendly, and everyone says good morning, and you just can't walk by someone without saying something. Like it's just so polite and friendly. I miss that kind of stuff.
The people are very warm. They're definitely something that Costa Rica is 100%. My penultimate question is: obviously, you're back in the States now. But what do you wish, if anything, you could tell yourself, a younger Becca, before coming to Costa Rica, perhaps the 2011 trip where you were going to be here for 7 years? Anything you could tell yourself in preparation?
Oh my gosh, Adam. I don't know. That's a really hard one. I would say maybe. I mean, I don't know. I feel like I did those 7 years exactly how I wanted to. I traveled to Europe a ton. I traveled to South America. I got to love Costa Rica. I saved some money. It kind of awesome. I wouldn't really change much.
No regrets.
None.
Yeah, no, that's great. I mean, I hear that quite a lot with some of those responses. A couple of people say, you learn patience quicker.
Yeah.
But, that's a good thing. It took me about 10 years. But I mean, that's generally quite positive. Everybody's happy that lives here. And it seems like you had such a wonderful experience. There was no massively negative reason for you to.
No, not by any means. And that's what I didn't want to leave Costa Rica, hating Costa Rica. Again, I don't know if I ever would have, but like I wanted to leave at the time that like I was, still in love with it and like, but just needed to change essentially. Like it wasn't because anything Costa Rica wise, like it was just needing something different.
I mean, finally, how often do you travel back to Costa Rica, and do you ever think you will come back to live?
I was just there in March, so my first like post-COVID trip, which was so nice. It was just felt so great. I like before COVID, I was there like I think 3 times in that year, and I think that would be great 2 or 3 times. I have friends to
Yeah.
stay with, so it's an
Yeah,
easy.
yeah.
Um,
It was
I
nice.
don't see myself ever living there again. Maybe like further into retirement kind of thing.
Yeah.
But I want to explore like more of Europe, and I want to explore, other areas. So I don't know that I will ever live there again.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, yeah, as you say, especially from Denver as well, it's a very quick flight, more
Yeah.
direct flights day to day, coming in from Denver to San Jose. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's fantastic. I'm the same way. I'm pretty set in Costa Rica, but as long as I'm able to travel to the UK maybe twice a year for extended periods, obviously family, friends, the seasons, you kind of I get that hit from home and then come back and be pretty content.
Yeah, you're like, okay, this is perfect.
Works the other way
I
around.
think that's one thing that like US expats have like such a benefit is you can be home so easy from Costa
Yeah.
Rica. I know for you guys it's a lot harder
Yeah.
and more expensive, but yeah, like I went to like the US, on a weekend
Yeah.
because it's so easy. Like it's,
Yeah.
it doesn't have to be this huge trip, which is so nice for US
Yeah,
expats.
for sure. Well, Becca, you've been a wealth of information. Thanks for taking the time to chat with us on Trial Costa Rica. As ever, I'll put all your information in the description box below so people can reach out to you directly. Questions about perhaps Denver even, but planning a trip to Costa Rica, living in Samara, beach town, or even if some of your old friends want to say hello on YouTube. Thanks a lot. Hopefully we'll get you back on in the not too distant future.
Perfect. Thank you, Adam.
Fantastic.
Bye.
Well, there we go. That was a great chat with Becca about travel, living, and relocation to Costa Rica and beach life in Samara. You can reach out to Becca below. Her details are in the description box. And if you have any questions for us, let me know and I'll get straight back to you. Please don't forget to subscribe as ever to stay in touch and never miss an episode of Trial Costa Rica. I'm Adam Baker and I'll see you guys next week. Ciao for now.